Welcome back to Factoring Trinomials. Today we're going to be going over what happens when your leading term is not just x squared, but maybe it's 2x squared, negative 3x squared, or 100x squared. What do I do about that? We're going to be using the same graphic organizers we've used from the last two lessons, but we're just going to be adding on an additional piece. So let's start. Again, some vocabulary you need to know in case you've forgotten. We have our leading term, our middle term, and our last term. I'm going to still keep using this vocabulary as we move forward in these problems. So here's our polynomial. Let me just go ahead and highlight that. This is our polynomial. You'll notice something a little bit different about this, and it has a 2x squared. My leading term is not just x squared. So let's see how different it will be to actually factor this. Again, I'm going to start with my middle term, 13x, and my first times my last. So what's 2 times 15? 30x squared. So again, I'm going to think about two numbers that if I multiply them together, I'll get 30. But if I add them together, I'll get 13. So if you need to list out your multiples, you can. But you should have gotten 3 times 10. 3 times 10 is 30. 3 plus 10 will get me 13. Again, it doesn't matter where I place these at all. 3 or 10x here, or if I put the 3x here and the 10x there. My leading term is 2x squared. My last term is 15. Okay. I'm going to still ask myself the same question. What variable do these two have in common? An x. Not just that, but a 1x. 1 times 2 will get me 2. 1 times 3 will get me 3. How about these two? What are they both a multiple of? 5. Great. I just added that positive here now because you'll notice that all of our numbers are positive. I'm going to start with positives only and then work my way to negatives. All right. What do these two have in common? Well, they have an x, but what else do they have in common? Both multiples of 2. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 5 is 10. So let's try this next one. What are these two a multiple of? 3. Again, I'm dealing with positives because all of my numbers are positive. So my polynomials are 2x plus 3 and x plus 5. Now, a lot of students say, what happened to that 1, Miss Martinez? Well, that 1 is no longer there. You could put it in there if you want. You don't really need it, though. I know, I see it. There's 1x right there. See? You see it? 1x. I see it. You see it. We don't really need to beat a dead horse. All right, let's move on to the next one. Oh, I'm going to throw negatives right out the gate. Okay, so we're going to start with our middle term, negative 2x. First times my last, 3 times 8 is going to be, and because it's a negative, negative 24x squared. So I'm going to think of two numbers that if I multiply them together, I'll get 24x squared, not just positive 24, but a negative 24x squared. And if I add them together, I'll get negative 2. If you have to, definitely I suggest you write out your times tables for this. If you need to, 1 and 24, 2 and 12, what's the next one? 3 and 8. 4 and 6. Oh, yeah. So which one would it be? What will get me a negative 2 if I combine them together? Negative 6 and positive 4. Again, it doesn't matter where I put them. I'm going to put my leading term here, my last term here, and I'm going to ask myself the same question. What do these two have in common? They have an x. What are they both a multiple of? What about these two? What do they have in common? So a 2, right? 2 goes in a 6 and a 2 can go in 8. What else do they have in common here? We'll get to that. And it's going to be a negative. Anyways, let's go on to the next one. What are these two a multiple of, and what variable do they share? 3x, right? Because 3 times 1 and 3 times 2. What are these two a multiple of? 4. Great. Now, where am I going to put that negative? Even though I already gave you a hint. I'm going to put it on the 2 or on the 4? On the 2. So my binomials are 3x plus 4 and x minus 2. Not too different from the last few questions we've done so far. Let's try another one. 5x squared minus 14x plus 8. All right, so we will multiply. We'll have a middle term go here. Multiply our leading times our last. What is 5 times 8? 40. Great. Again, I'm going to think of two numbers that multiply to get me 40, but add to get me a negative 14. You have to list out your multiples again for 40. You should know this one by now. Negative 4 and negative 10. Negative 4 times negative 10 is 40. Negative 4 and negative 10 add up to get you negative 14. All right. It doesn't matter where you put them. But we're going to put our leading term here, our last term there. What do these two have in common? They have an x. What multiple do they have in common? 5. Great. What do these two have in common? What are they both a multiple of? 4. Awesome. What do these two have in common? 1x. Great. What do these two have in common? What are they both a multiple of? 2. Now the moment of truth comes again. What should I put? Where should I put the negative? On the 4? On the 2? Or both? Both, because a negative 2 times a negative 4 will get me a positive 8. So my binomials are x minus 2 and 5x minus 4. Again, at any point in time, you feel free to just pause me and try them out on your own. If you have any additional questions, please just ask your tutors and teachers. Let's try this one. Middle term is 11x. Last times first is 6 times 3, 18x squared. All right, what are my two numbers? If I add them together, I will get 11. Again, if you need to, write out your times tables for 18. 1 times 18, 2 times 9, 3 times 6, 2 times 9. Doesn't matter where I put this 2x or this 9x here. Doesn't really matter. My leading term, my last term. What do these two have in common? What variable do they have in common? What multiple do they have in common? 3x. What do these two have in common? What are they both a multiple of? Both a multiple of 1. Again, I'm putting positives here already just because all of my numbers are positive. What about these two? What are they both a multiple of, and what variable do they have in common? Great. What about these two? What are they both a multiple of? 3. Awesome. So my binomials are 2x plus 3 and 3x plus 1. Let's try this one. My middle term is negative 15x. Leading times my last is 9 times 4, which is 36 squared. Two numbers multiply to get you 36, but add to get you negative 15. If you have to, again, write out your multiples. and try each of them out. Okay, 1 and 36, one of them has to be negative. Oh, sorry about that. 4 times 9, one of them has to be negative. I forgot about 3 and 12. And actually, what did I forget? What have I been forgetting? I have to put a negative on everything, right? Either positives or negatives. Either all positives or all negatives. Reason for that, no. Negative times a negative will get me a positive. Positive times a positive will get me a positive. Negative times a negative, positive times a positive. Negative times a negative, positive times a positive. There's some more. You don't have to exhaust this list. You do want to have some options to try out. What are your two numbers? Hopefully put negative 3 times a negative 12. Negative 3 and negative 12 gets you negative 15. All right, so let's put them in our places. Leading, last. What do these two have in common? What variable and number do they share? Good. What do these two have in common? If you can't find anything, it's probably a 1. What about these two? What multiple do they have in common? What variable do they share? Great. What about these two? What are they both a multiple of? Now, comes the moment of truth. Do I put a negative on the 1, on the 4, or on both? On both, because a negative 1 times a negative 4 will get me a positive 4. So my binomials are 3x minus 4 and 3x minus 1. Let's try one last one with y's. Why not? All right, my middle term is 7y. First times my last is negative 8y squared. Two numbers multiply to get me a negative 8, add to get me 7. 8 and negative 1. And it doesn't matter where I put these, either here and here. Well, I guess they're going to stay there. My leading term, my last term. What multiple do they share and what variable do they have in common? 4y. What do these two have in common? We're going to get to the negative part, by the way, in just a little bit. Some of you can already see it. Well, they have a negative in common. We'll get there. Don't worry. What do these two have in common? Definitely a 1y, both multiples of 1. 1 times 4 is 4. 1 times 1, well, we'll get to that. What do these two have in common? 2. All right. So now, where should I put the negative? On the 1 or on the 2? On the 1. You'll also notice that they had a negative 1 or a negative in common. My binomials are 4y minus 1 and y plus 2. Again, if you need additional help, just come in and ask your tutors or teachers. As always, continue to do your homework, come into the Learning Center, and as always, happy math problem solving.